Hello, and welcome back to the numberless rope guide of the cylinder. And today, we shall venture high up into the breathtaking iron mountains of the cylinder, also known as the Dragon Country. As you walked through the forest, you eventually came to a small pond, and there was a strange orangish creature climbing out of the water. It was a water fox, a species of monotremes closely related to the platypus, that has evolved an extremely similar predatory body plan to foxes. And it primarily eats water birds such as ducks, geese, and other such things. As you continued walking through the woods, you came to a small clearing, where in the distance you saw a creature rubbing its back on a tree. It was a bronze needleback. The bronze needleback is a roughly black bear-sized omnivore that scours the forest floor for things that fall out of the trees, tree sap, ants, and even pine cones, which it likes to squish in its mouth to get the seeds out. They are also very closely related to echidnas. They also typically nest in hollowed-out tree logs and stumps that not only help them evade predators and have a place to sleep at night, but it also gives them a great place to wait out the winter. You continued walking through the woods, and eventually you came across a small creek. And in the distance could be heard the sounds of crunching leaves. Something was eating nearby. It was the great needleback, a massive browser animal that eats primarily tree leaves, pine needles, pine cones, pine sap, and it is even known to occasionally topple exceptionally large trees, as it is not able to grab the foliage as easily from the ground. But when they are able to, they use their tongue, almost like a elephant trunk, to strip the leaves off the branches. Suddenly, high above in the trees, could be heard the sound of bronze-tipped swordtail. The swordtail is a mostly arboreal monotreme that is extremely omnivorous and is around the size of a ferret, and eats a variety of nuts, seeds, and even shelf fungus, as well as bird eggs and many other things. Swordtails also make their nests in high-up regions of pine trees, where the pine needles are tightly clustered together, allowing for extreme structural integrity in their houses. And as for their bronze-colored tails, do not underestimate them, as only one quill from those tails could cleave an entire human arm. You continued on, and you found yourself in a deep, much more densely packed area of woods. As you treaded through the slightly wet soil covered in ferns, you spotted a pair of very reptilian-looking footprints. It was the moss-necked dragon, the primary carnivore in these woods, that lives in family units similar to wolves. The moss-necked dragon also has a very interesting lifestyle, as it does hunt things the normal way, identifying its prey, waiting in the bushes, then giving chase. Or it can also regurgitate a small pine sap-based bomb that lays dormant in the soil until an animal comes by and steps on it by mistake. And hopefully, the effect will be that when they do, their leg will get struck to the ground or whatever the bomb was laying on. And then, in the morning, a team of moss-necked dragons will come out and see if they caught anything, and if they did, they will swiftly execute it. Off in the distance, you suddenly heard the terrifying wails of a blood-faced manticore. Blood-faced manticores, and manticores in general, are very intriguing creatures, as they are the only known mammal that actively hunts large predatory dragons. Manticores are also very closely related to their platypus cousins, and share their extremely sensitive electropneumatic organ in their bill, meaning that they are able to sense even the smallest vibrations in anything. And on top of that, they are very similar to cats, and have whiskers down their entire body, allowing them to sense even more of their surroundings. Meaning that a manticore doesn't necessarily need to see you to know that you're there. Which isn't great for dragons, but necessarily isn't that bad for people, considering that manticores don't typically go after humans, as they don't really eat mammals. In fact, manticores are so specialized into eating dragons that they developed these almost microscopic iron spikes on their tongue that allow them to rip the scales off of dead dragons while eating, making it more easy for them to dig into their food. And the reason why the blood-faced manticore is called such is because how they get that iron for their tongue is by licking the tree sap on the iron spruce trees in the Iron Mountains, which are extremely rich in iron coming from the soil. However, this has the byproduct of making their faces extremely red, almost like blood, and even smelling like blood, as it is actually iron, which also helps mask their smell against the blank canvas of strong iron smells that come from these mountains, meaning that even dragons with powerful senses of smell cannot detect them. You continued through the woods for much longer, until eventually the sun began setting. And off in the distance, you began seeing something lightly glimmering in light. They were hundreds of tiny draconic wings, belonging to the Nightcrawler, a species of highly social, small dragon that is nocturnal and primarily a scavenger, meaning that they have extremely strong stomach acid, which can also be fed into their neck pouch, allowing them to expel large amounts of acid at predators. Suddenly you heard the sound of deep guttural growls coming from in the woods, and then a massive shadow of wings came flying out of the canopy and into the sky. It was the King of the Caldera. Kings of the Caldera, while on the smaller side, are very dangerous to humans, and extremely territorial. Similar to mountain lions, they patrol massive areas of land, and routinely burn massive areas of woodland to mark their territory, especially around their nest. They are also comparable to peregrine falcons in terms of flight and agility, and are scarily good at flying and running on the ground. And like any good king dragon, they have insanely durable scales, making it difficult to place a hit on any part of their body that would cause them to bleed out. However, if you wish to potentially demobilize this creature while it is hunting you, you can aim for its wings and its tail to make its flight significantly less graceful. However, if you find yourself in a situation that dire, it may be a better idea just to run, and if that fails, you're simply doomed. It is highly implied that after that point, you were burnt to a crisp and then fed to 5 hungry dragon hatchlings. And that brings us to the end of this chapter of the Survival Guide.